Welcome to the Ultimate Music Teachers Productivity and Profitability Podcast. I'm your host, Glory St. Germain. Tune in to discover how you can unleash your teaching potential and turn your passion for music education into profit. Let's dive in. Today, we're not just tuning into notes and rhythms, we're tuning into transformation. Imagine a world where every shower singer steps out of the bathroom and onto the stage with confidence and flair. Well, that's the world we're exploring today. As music educators and enthusiasts, we're not just teaching notes, but we're shaping lives, just instilling confidence and orchestrating those wild dreams of ours. So let's embark on this musical journey together, where every lesson learned is a note in the symphony of our music teaching careers. Welcome to the Ultimate Music Teachers Podcast. I'm your host, Glory St. Germain, and today we have the pleasure of chatting with Benny. He's all the way from Australia. Benny is not just a vocal coach and a rock musician, but he's a transformative figure in the world of music education. With 4 music degrees and a rich 13-year journey in the vocal coaching industry, Benny has mastered the art of turning shower singers into confident vocalists. So let's dive into his world of music and laughter and learning. So welcome, Benny. How are you doing?
Thanks, Glory. I'm doing well today. And how about you?
I'm just super good. And all the way from Australia to Canada. What a great little combination we have.
Thanks for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, absolutely. So, Benny, as an expert in your field, what aspect of your work are you most passionate about? What's really unique? What unique insights can you bring to our listeners today?
Well, I've been a vocal coach for around 13 years now. And so I started just teaching vocal techniques. And then over time, I saw that all of my students, they have some sort of performance anxiety, whether it's a good kind of anxiety or like ones that affects your singing and performance. And most likely the latter category. So then I went deeper into how to help my students overcome their performance anxiety. And so eventually I found this, system that incorporates both, I call the inner game of singing with vocal technique so that they can express themselves freely and sing with confidence.
I think it's so wonderful because it is that inner game. And I think especially with vocalists, because your instrument is your body, your voice is your tool. And I think the landscape of music education is always evolving. I mean, not only for singers, but, for musicians in general. But as you're looking at, the singing, what are maybe some of the current trends or changes in the industry that are impacting music education platforms, and especially for vocal coaches such as yourself?
Well, as a high school music classroom teacher, that's what I also work as. I've been seeing a lot of trends in artificial intelligence. There's a lot of concerns around that and how mainly for plagiarism. I guess it's not really affecting music students as much right now, but I can see how this artificial intelligence can give rise to apps on computers or phone that can analyze how your voice sounds, the tone and the pitch, and just give you suggestions on how to improve your voice. And I know that there are currently a lot of, vocal analysis software like that on the market, but you still need a teacher to help you, analyze it and tell you, what this means, how to improve it. So I can see artificial intelligence, I wouldn't say eliminate the need of a teacher, but maybe enhance and the learning of the student when they're practicing on their own and just working with the vocal coach. They can achieve the results that they want a lot quicker and more efficiently.
100%. I so agree with you, Benny. And I think too, for those that are in business, I mean, AI is to me a creative tool and a time saver. But what we still crave and always will is person-to-person relationships real conversations. And I think, and coaches and teachers, and, I think it's exciting to see the technology that's available and to let it enhance our musicianship skills as vocalists, as well as educators and coaches. And I think we've all had, even that one special person who kind of steers us towards success. Can you share with us how your mentor, Adam Lockwood, influenced your journey?
Oh, well, that would take me away from vocal coaching, but we'll still be talking about music education. So I mentioned that I also teach high school classroom
Mhm.
music. So in order to be trained as a high school music teacher, we have to go through a university course. And as part of the course, we do a placement. So we're supposed to do 2 placements, but I did 3 placements because my first placement, I was under a lot of stress. So I got into conflicts with my supervisor of that placement. So she's my supervising teacher. And 3 days before I was about to complete my placement, she failed me basically because of that one email that I sent late at night. I was a little bit angry and frustrated and stressed. So, well, I learned a very valuable lesson from that. But that was a blessing in disguise because without failing that first placement, I wouldn't
Mhm.
have got to my third placement, which was when I met my supervising teacher, Adam Lockwood. So he was the head teacher of the performing arts department. So he's a music teacher. So I observed his lessons. He even gave me feedback while I was teaching his classes. And just by watching and just getting feedback from him, he's just so passionate about what he does. He's a music producer himself. And just the strategies, I could tell he really cared about his students. And he was really big on positive reinforcements. He said to me once, and I still remember, we had this little merit certificates awards that we give out to students. He said, just give them out like candy, right? So that really resonated with me because, I'm all about, positive reinforcements, but also he's firm and strict when he had to be. And so, but at the core of his teaching is all about inspiring students
Yeah.
to excel in music. And so before that placement, I went to, it was an independent school. And then I went to a public school where it's different demographic and ability levels. We use a lot of worksheets. So I carried that habit into his school, into his classes. He said, Benny, get rid of the worksheets. And that's so boring. So he showed me how to be hands-on with the teaching. And so that just made a huge difference compared to just doing worksheets, which had his place. Worksheets, they have their place, but for what we were doing at that time, he showed me a better way of enhancing the learning of students. And so those values and strategies, I still carry them with me to this day as a music educator and vocal coach.
And isn't that so impactful? When we think about who has been a great influence for us, we almost always say, well, there was this teacher that I had when I was in high school, or there was a teacher that I had, in college, or I had a mentor, or one of my coaches did this. Like, we have people that we recognize helped us to achieve our success where we are today as music educators. And I think it's so important to recognize them. I know for my teacher too, I was so passionate about learning from her that even when my family moved, I was a young girl and my family moved an hour and a half away. And I remember saying to my parents, if you don't drive me to my teacher, Miss Helen, then I'm going to quit because she was the one I loved to learn from. So every week we would drive an hour and a half to my music lesson, and I'd have a 2 hour lesson and then an hour and a half back home. But I'm so glad that my parents said, yes, this is important. Your mentor, your educator, the person that impacts you and motivates you to do your best is worth the drive sometimes, worth the trip. That was BC before computers. So we didn't have a choice to be learning online back then. So, Benny, when you look back and in your approach, you incorporated cognitive behavioral therapy and meditation with vocal techniques. How did you come to integrate these methods, and what's the impact been on your students?
Well, I've done a lot of research on the voice, and when so I'm bringing this story back to myself. So my dream is to be a professional rock musician. And well, singing actually didn't come easily to me. I'm a very analytical person. So I decided I wanted to do rock singing and metal screaming, which uses the voice in a very different way. There are a lot of literature, on classical singing and contemporary singing, but not much on metal screaming. So not many people knew how it works, and even fewer people teach it and teach it well. So I did a lot of research and I stumbled upon this article on performance anxiety and how it affects singers and how there are four kinds of performance anxiety. And there's only one good kind and there's one that's the most common kind. So that really intrigued me. So I thought maybe this is why this is hard for me. Metal screaming, because I look at rock singers and metal singers. They just they have this abandon. Sorry, so they just get lost in the performance and just do it and not worry about anything. So I went to the library and got these books on anxiety, different anxieties disorders, and what it is, how it works. And also I saw that cognitive behavioral therapy is one of the most effective or non-invasive way to overcome anxiety. And there was this one book in particular. I actually don't remember what it's called, but I read that book cover to cover maybe 2 or 3 times. And then I came up with this, I guess, well, I didn't come up with this, based on what's in that book. I tweaked it to help singers overcome their performance anxiety. So it's mainly to reframe and to experiment with the new thought patterns. But at the same time, they're still going to have all of these symptoms that comes from anxieties, sweaty palms, fidgeting and shaky legs and all that. So we also need to treat those symptoms at the same time as we treat the root causes of performance anxiety. So that's what brought me to the meditation strategies. And to answer your question, when I started implementing these strategies into my own singing and screaming, I noticed it was so much easier to get the sound that I wanted and more sustainably. So I thought if this can work for metal screaming, surely it can work for normal singing. And so I tried it on my private students, the ones who needed it the most. And I took them through, the theory side. We just through a lot of trial and error on my part as well. I fine-tuned it, and now I'm able to just incorporate it, integrate it naturally into a technique without them knowing that that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Wow. And I think, I love even the thought of, have that performance anxiety and like, how do you overcome them? Like there's so many, and you really have to get to know your students, and really they have to trust you and say, okay, Benny's my coach, he's my teacher, like I need to listen. And speaking of listening, I think that many of our listeners on our podcast today are really intrigued by the transformation from the shower singer to the stage ready performer. So, what's the first step that you recommend to someone starting this journey? Some singing in the shower. How are you going to get me over to the stage, Benny?
So on my journey as a vocal coach so far, there are generally two kinds of beginner singer when they start to inquire about singing lessons. Both types, they have performance anxiety. The first category that would not acknowledge it, but the second category that would say, okay, I'm terrified of this. Can you help me?
Yes.
So I would say that the first step is to acknowledge it and just to admit to yourself that you have it. It's not easy, but that's the first step, just to acknowledge that it's there so that we can start to manage it, because you cannot control anxiety. We cannot control our emotions, but we can learn to manage our emotions by changing our thoughts. So that would be the first step, just to acknowledge that it's there. And the second step is to, once you acknowledge that it's there, just be kind to yourself and just be gentle, be patient with yourself. Be your own best friend. Be your own best teacher. So just be kind, and eventually, over time, going through with the proper strategies and vocal technique And with the proper guidance from a vocal coach, then you will eventually start to manage your performance anxiety, and then eventually it will be a thing of the past.
Wow. I should take some lessons from you. It's funny when you love to sing, and yet you're right. You sometimes just don't even start because you're just so unsure of yourself. But when you have the right coach who can draw those things and realize that you do have performance anxiety, then you start to relax and think, well, okay, I mean, what's the worst that can happen, right? And when we're looking back, could you share a memorable moment or a breakthrough with a student that particularly stands out for you in your career?
Well, I would say I'm not gonna say her real name, but let's just call her Jess. Okay, so Jess, she's a high school. Well, she started lessons with me as a primary school student, and then into her high school years, and she was autistic, and so her mom would bring her to my studio, and we would have lessons. She was very very shy at first, and as she opened up to me more, she told me that she would get really nervous just speaking in front of her classmates, in front of the class. Her legs would shake, and she would always make sure there's something in front of her just so it would hide her legs shaking.
Yeah.
But she had amazing voice. But due to her autism, so it made her performance anxiety worse.
Yeah.
And so we went through a lot of the strategies that I did research on, and I had to tweak it so that it suits someone with autism, and also in a younger age group. And at that time, I held showcases twice a year, June and December. The first one she signed up to perform in it, but she didn't show up because for performance anxiety, which is okay. But the second one, she showed up. She was so visibly nervous. She was shaking. I could see her visibly shaking, holding the mic. She was shaking. Her legs were shaking, but her mom was there. She recorded the whole thing, and she performed a song in front of a small crowd, and everyone clapped, and her mom was so proud she started crying, tears of
Yeah.
joy. That was a standout moment for me, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I think, isn't it so wonderful when we know, just as educators, that we do make a difference in our students' lives. We do impact not only their musical journey, but just their emotional journey, and in all aspects of their life. Sometimes what starts off to be a simple lesson is something that's going to build confidence in everything that they do. And it's just amazing. And I'm sure her mom has great memories of that. So speaking of performances, we're going to add a little fun in here, Benny. If you could have a vocal battle with any musician from history, who would it be and why?
Well, that's an easy one because I would definitely choose Chester Bennington from Linkin Park. And because he's the one who inspired me to be a rock musician in the first place. When he's singing, you can hear he's so vulnerable, but at the same time, there's strength in it because of how he shapes his tone. And to this day, I go onto YouTube and people are still saying the same thing. People are still watching and still saying the same thing about his voice, although he's not with us anymore. But if I were to be in a vocal battle with him, he would definitely win the battle, but it would be an honor for me for sure.
Yeah. And when you look back on your 13 years of experience, what's maybe one piece of advice that you could give to upcoming vocal coaches?
Well, when I first started doing, teaching singing, I was also doing the postgraduate degree in teaching singing. I was basically just regurgitating what I learned at university and from my past teachers and from books that I read. And then through trial and error, through lots of trial and error with a lot of patient students who stuck with me while I, made all those errors and mistakes. But I learned from those mistakes, and what I did that I thought made a difference, I'm going to say maybe two things. Number one is I really care about the students' progress.
Mm-hmm.
And second is from my training as a high school teacher, we have to assess our own teaching. At the
Yeah.
end of the lesson, what went well, what didn't go well, how do we improve that? How do we, keep the good ones, keep the good things going? And so I did that. If I thought if I could do that, for a whole class of, 20, 30 students, then I can do that for one student. And that would
Yeah.
imagine that kind of the impact that that would make, for my lessons. So then I started planning each lesson, and then after each lesson, I would, spend 5, 10 minutes, make some notes, what went well, what didn't go well, what to try next time. And just over time and through also doing research, I improved my practice. And now I still plan my lessons and I still take notes and assess because, every student is different. And I really believe in tailoring, customizing the lessons to the students and just constantly improving our teaching using research and also our own, the feedback that we see from our lessons.
Yeah. I think that's such great advice, Benny, to say, take just a second and write down what went well, what didn't go well, what was the feedback from your student. Because what happens is if you don't do something like that, the week goes by, you've seen, 40 students or whatever it might be, and you can't even remember what went well and what didn't. And I think that's a really good idea, just to kind of keep a little journal and stay connected with that. I think it helps us as educators too. So I love that. That's a really, really good piece of advice for not only vocal coaches, but for all music educators. And when we look back, our fast-paced world as it is right now, one of the things is really maintaining a balance, and I think that's crucial. So when you look at your career and you're super busy, how do you balance your personal passion for music and with the demands of being a vocal coach and also an educator in the schools?
Mm-hmm. Well, first thing we have to be, I'm speaking for myself here. I have to
Yes.
be realistic about the finances. So
Yeah.
the first thing that I did was, you know, really work out my budget and figure out how much I need to get by and how much I need to achieve my dreams. And I remember back in the COVID times, I had this meeting with business mentor. And she told me about this concept of workhorses and the unicorns. So the workhorses are the things that can bring you steady income consistently that easily that you can do right now. And then you have the unicorns, which are the dreams that you're chasing. So I really started on to do work on my workhorses, and they are my high school teaching job and my vocal coaching job. And so once I got that going, steadily, then I found that I could free up more time
Mhm.
to work on, to do the things that I love, in my personal life, to work on my fitness and also to continue working on my music business and also my online singing course. And I've also able to cut down my working day to about 3 to 4 days a week. So
Yeah.
I have 2 to 3 days or three to work on my unicorns.
Yes.
And so I found out that, once I got my finances in order,
Yeah.
then all the other things will free up my time to do the things that don't necessarily bring money, but maybe in the long run it will bring money, but not in the short run, but also to free up time for personal things that I want to do.
Yeah. And who doesn't love a unicorn?
I love
You
unicorns.
know, and I think I remember my mom, she always used to say, dream big. And she used to say to me, if you're not scared, you're not dreaming big enough. You really do have to go after that. And you're right. In the meantime, you've got to have your workhorses so that you can maintain that. But finding the balance between, 4 days a week, workhorse, 3 days a week, unicorns. I love that.
Hmm.
I love it, Benny. So, finally, Benny, if you could perform a duet with any artist, alive or past, who would it be and what song would you two choose?
Well, I would go with Chester Bennington again,
Yeah.
and with one of my favorite songs of all time, "Numb" by Linkin Park.
Yeah. And, I think it's fun when we just imagine that, what would that sound like? How much fun would that be, right? Your journey, your insights have been really incredibly inspiring, Benny. And I just want to say thank you for sharing your experiences and your wisdom with us. And how can people learn more about you and about your music teaching business?
What if you want to go from singing in the shower to singing in front of people? I have an ebook called How to Go from Shower to Stage, where I tell you the 3-step process that I take my students through to become a confident singer. And you can download that ebook at topsingingsecrets.com. And I'm also on TikTok and Instagram as Top Singing Secrets. You can follow me there, and where I post weekly and sometimes daily videos on singing tutorials and how to overcome performance anxiety, and that you can gain some insights from.
Wow, that's very generous. Thank you so much. So make sure to check it out. I'll leave the link in the show notes. It's topsingingsecrets.com. Grab your free ebook and don't forget to step out of the shower, hit the stage, and keep on singing. I want to say thank you again, Benny. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. Looking forward to seeing you again for sure. Thank you, Benny.
Thank you so much, Glory. It's so nice to see you again and to hear from you. Well, I'm happy to come back anytime.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to our listeners, remember that every voice has a story and every story deserves to be heard. So keep tuning in for more musical adventures on the Ultimate Music Teachers Productivity and Profitability Podcast. And until next time, let's keep enriching lives through music education. Thanks for listening. Have a magical musical day and keep on singing. Get out of the shower. Thanks. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to the Ultimate Music Teachers Productivity and Profitability Podcast. Together, we can transform lives through the power of music education. I invite you to explore what's possible for your musical journey inside our UMT community. Simply join our Ultimate Music Teachers private Facebook group, where we network, answer questions, host live events, and connect on a deeper level. Here's to your ultimate music teaching success with productivity and profitability. Till next time, teach with passion.